His shoe stopped at my broken front step, and my whole life almost came apart. I had seen Adrian Vale walk into boardrooms that smelled like cedar and fear. I had watched 6 grown men in black suits go silent when he lifted one finger. I had stood beside him in marble lobbies, taking calls, fixing disasters, arranging flights, pretending his world was only schedules and signatures. But I had never seen him standing outside my house. Not this house. Not with chipped white paint. Not with a porch light that flickered like it was tired of trying. Not with my mother's old wind chime clicking against rusted metal. Not with the screen door hanging crooked because I still hadn't had the money to fix it. I froze with one grocery bag cutting into my palm. He looked wrong there. Too sharp. Too expensive. Dark coat. Clean lines. Leather shoes that had no business touching cracked concrete. Behind him, a black SUV idled at the curb like a threat too large for my street. I heard my younger brother laugh inside. Then I heard the oxygen machine. My blood went cold. Adrian's eyes shifted past me, just once, and that was enough. Enough for him to hear it too. Enough for him to understand this was not a quick stop. Not some neat little apartment with a curated lie. This was my real life. The one I had kept folded small and hidden under every pressed blouse and every calm answer. "Why are you here?" I asked. My voice came out thinner than I wanted. He didn't answer right away. That was always the worst thing about him. Silence from Adrian never meant nothing. It meant calculation. It meant he had already noticed more than I wanted him to. He held up a thin cream envelope. The wedding seating charts. I had left the revised copy on my desk instead of sending it to his driver. A stupid mistake. Small. Human. The kind I never made. "You didn't answer your phone," he said. I looked down at the grocery bag. Generic cereal. Soup cans. A prescription refill. Cheap bread. Proof of every reason I had built walls around my life. I was busy. His gaze dropped to my hand, then to the front door again. The machine inside gave another steady hiss. My brother laughed once more, but it ended in a cough. That changed his face. Only slightly. A tightening at the jaw. A stillness that carried more force than shouting. "You live here," he said. It was not a question. I hated that those 3 words felt like exposure. Before I could answer, the front door pushed open behind me. My brother stepped halfway out, all long limbs and worry, 17, and trying too hard to look older than he was. He saw Adrian and stopped cold. "Clara," he said, too loud. Mom's tube kinked again. My groceries hit the porch. I moved first, but Adrian was already at the door, not touching me, just blocking the narrow frame as if instinct had put him between my house and the world. 2 men had turned on the sidewalk near the SUV across the street. I recognized neither face, but I recognized the stare. Too fixed. Too interested. I felt it immediately, that ugly pressure of being seen. Adrian saw them too. Everything in him changed. He took my brother by the shoulder, firm and controlled, and moved him back inside. Then he looked at me. "Get your mother's line fixed." Now. It was not a debate. It was protection wearing command. I should have argued. In the office, I would have. At home, with strangers watching my windows, I didn't waste the breath. I ran to the living room. The oxygen line had bent under the leg of the recliner. My mother's chest rose too fast, too shallow. Her eyes were wide, embarrassed more than afraid, which somehow hurt worse. "It's okay," I whispered, dropping to my knees. "I've got it." My hands shook as I freed the tube and checked the flow. The hiss of oxygen steadied before my pulse did. I kept one hand on the tubing and the other on my mother's wrist until the color returned to her lips. The concentrator rattled in the corner, old and stubborn, like it resented being needed again. My brother stood by the doorway in his socks, frozen, one hand still gripping the edge of the wall. "I fixed it," I said, mostly for him. Then I felt it. Not fear. Not exactly. Awareness. A man used to boardrooms and blood-soaked orders was standing in my living room, silent enough to hear my mother struggle for air. I looked up. Adrian Vale had taken off his gloves. That shocked me more than the men outside. The black leather rested on our chipped coffee table beside a plastic pill sorter and a stack of overdue utility notices I had forgotten to hide. His tailored coat looked wrong in this room. Too expensive. Too sharp. Like a weapon leaned against a cradle. My mother tried to sit straighter. "I'm sorry," she said, breathless, humiliated. "The place is a mess." Something moved across Adrian Vale's face. Small. Dangerous in a different way. "You don't apologize for being sick," he said. The room went still. Nobody spoke to my mother like that. Not doctors rushing through charity clinic halls. Not bill collectors. Not landlords. Certainly not men like him. My brother stared at Adrian Vale as if he had just seen a wolf speak. I rose too quickly and nearly lost my balance. You shouldn't be here. I know. His voice was low, controlled, but his eyes were no longer on me. They moved once around the room and took in everything with brutal precision. The patched armchair, the half-empty fridge visible through the kitchen doorway, the extension cord taped to the baseboard, my mother's medication lined up beside coupons and prayer cards. He was not just looking. He was calculating. That scared me more than if he had shouted. What do you want? I asked. This time he looked at me. To know why my assistant leaves before dawn, works 14-hour days, never asks for an advance, and still looks tired enough to collapse by Friday. The words landed harder than anger would have. I had prepared for accusation, for suspicion, for some cold demand tied to his canceled meeting and the black SUV idling outside my building. Not for attention. My mother's fingers found mine. Clara works too hard. I wanted to disappear. Instead, Adrian Vale took one step toward the kitchen table where my unpaid notices sat under a grocery receipt. I moved in front of them before he could touch anything. That made his gaze sharpen. Who was outside before we arrived? He asked. My stomach dropped. So he had noticed the dented silver sedan across the street. The one that had been there 3 nights in a row. No one. Don't lie to me in your own home. I hated that the words made heat rise to my face. Hated even more that he was right. My brother spoke before I could stop him. They come after dark. I turned. Evan. Too late. He swallowed. They asked for my dad. Silence cracked open in the room. My mother shut her eyes. Adrian Vale did not waste a second. Your father is alive? The question hit like glass. I answered because no one else could. Alive is generous. That was all I meant to say. But once shame is exposed, it starts speaking for you. He left debts, I said. Then he disappeared. A few months ago, men started knocking again. They think he hid something here. Cash, records, I don't know. When no one answers, they sit outside. They call from block numbers. They wait. Adrian Vale's jaw tightened, just once. This was no longer about poverty. No longer about embarrassment. This was threat. Pressure. A family marked by someone else's cowardice. A new kind of danger. And you told no one, he said. You are my employer, not my priest. A reckless thing to say. Rain tapped the porch roof in a thin, nervous rhythm while I stood inside Clara Whitmore's narrow hallway and realized I had walked into a life she had hidden with military precision. Not hidden from shame. Hidden from me. The house smelled like boiled rice, rubbing alcohol, and damp plaster. A lamp with a cracked shade threw weak yellow light across walls patched with different shades of paint. On the floor near the door sat 2 pairs of worn shoes, both too small to be hers. A plastic grocery bag held prescription bottles with pharmacy labels half peeled off. Nothing in that space looked careless. Everything looked stretched to its limit. I had come expecting defiance after what she had said to me. You are my employer, not my priest. I had come ready to catch negligence. To find records missing. Lies. Some sign that the flawless woman behind my schedule, my calls, my sealed meetings had been cutting corners while I wasn't looking. Instead, I heard a dry cough from the next room. Then a child's voice, thin and breathless. Clara, did they leave? Every ugly assumption in me stopped moving. Clara Whitmore turned so fast I saw real fear break through her face for the first time since I had known her. Not office tension. Not restraint. Fear. Her hand shot toward me, not to touch me, but to stop me from taking one more step. Do not go in there. Too late. I looked past her shoulder. A boy of maybe 10 sat propped against a stack of pillows on a sagging couch. A blanket pulled up to his waist, a nebulizer mask hanging loose in one hand. His skin was too pale. His eyes were too alert for a child who should have been asleep. Beside him, on a dining chair pushed against the couch, an older woman lay under another blanket with one ankle wrapped and elevated on folded towels. A metal walker stood near the wall. On the coffee table were unpaid utility notices held down by a ceramic mug, an inhaler, and an envelope from a clinic stamped final notice. 2 dependents. Immediate family. Not visitors. Not a temporary mess. A battlefield. The boy saw me and went still. The older woman tried to sit up too quickly, winced, and grabbed the arm of the chair. Clara moved before I did. She crossed the room, adjusted the blanket around the boy, set the nebulizer upright, and touched the older woman's shoulder with the ease of repetition. Then she faced me again, chin lifted, eyes burning. This is why I leave exactly at 7 when I can. This is why I do payroll corrections from my phone. This is why I never ask for favors. Her voice did not shake. Mine almost did, though no one in that room would have heard it. Who are they? My brother. My mother. A short answer. A wall built from exhaustion. The boy's gaze dropped to my suit, my watch, my shoes. All the evidence that I did not belong in rooms like this unless I was there to take something. The older woman looked at Clara first, not me. That told me more than words. She was measuring danger by her daughter's expression. I stepped farther in anyway, slow enough not to alarm them. Under the window, I saw why Clara's curtains remained closed even in daylight. The glass had been spiderwebbed in one corner and covered with clear packing tape. On the sill sat a security chain torn half out of the wood. Near the trash can, hidden badly beneath newspaper, lay a brick wrapped in a stained dish towel. Not random. Delivered. My eyes went to Clara. How long? Her mouth hardened. 3 weeks. 3 weeks. She had answered my calls, managed my calendar, revised contracts, prepared my engagement dinner seating chart, and stood beside me in silk and black marble lobbies while coming home to this. The older woman spoke then, quietly. She said if she kept working, we could hold on another month. Clara closed her eyes for 1 second. Just one. The room went so still I could hear the old refrigerator stutter in the kitchen. Rain tapped the window unit. A loose blind clicked against the frame. Clara stood near the table with her shoulders locked, like if she moved too fast the whole lie would break open at her feet. The older woman kept both hands around a chipped mug, but her eyes stayed on me. Not afraid. Measured. Like she had already decided what kind of man I was, and was waiting to see if I understood it yet. I looked around again. Peeling paint. A bottle of prescription cough syrup on the counter. An inhaler beside unpaid utility bills held down with a salt shaker. A child-sized blanket folded with exact care on the arm of the couch. Not poverty for one bad week. Survival arranged with discipline. What are you holding on from? I asked. Clara's jaw tightened. You came here to ask why I missed one file revision. You've seen enough. No. I stepped closer to the table. I haven't. The older woman drew a breath, like she was tired of protecting Clara's pride. From collectors, she said. Not the bank kind. Clara turned fast. Please. But it was too late. The word had landed. A cold pressure settled under my ribs. In my world, men didn't knock on doors for late rent with bruised knuckles and borrowed threats unless somebody above them allowed that market to exist. I knew the shape of it before she said another word. Who? I asked. No one you know, Clara said too quickly. That lie offended both of us. I walked past her and saw the hallway. The second door was cracked open. Inside, a small oxygen concentrator hummed beside a narrow bed. A teenage girl lay asleep on top of the covers, too thin, one wrist resting over a stuffed rabbit gone gray with age. A hospital bracelet had been cut off and tied around the lamp switch like someone couldn't bear to throw it away. My chest pulled tight. Behind me, Clara's voice dropped. Don't wake her. I turned. Who is she? The answer came from the older woman. Her sister. Clara shut her eyes for half a second, then opened them and stood straighter, as if surrender had to be done with posture. She needs treatment twice a month. The insurance was cut after my father died. I covered what I could. Then one of the transport drivers offered help. Fast cash. No paperwork. Her mouth twisted. I said no. He sold my address anyway. I felt the blood leave my face in a way anger rarely allowed. Transport drivers. Runners. Men on the edge of my organization, protected by the fact that they moved things nobody wanted traced. Small men feeding on weaker people under a larger roof I had built. What did they want? I asked. To buy debt, she said. Then to own the favor behind it. The older woman set down the mug. When she refused, they started waiting outside. Calling after dark. Telling her accidents happened to sick girls who miss appointments. Every word scraped. Clara looked at me then, finally, not as my assistant, not as the woman who stood beside me in tailored black at charity galas and never let a schedule slip, but as someone cornered too long. I kept working because if I quit, they'd know they had broken me. And because your payroll cleared on time. Every time. That hurt more than accusation should have. I glanced at the front door. New lock. Cheap chain. Splintered wood around the frame. painted over badly. Evidence everywhere. Not dramatic. Worse. Repeated. How many times did they come here? 4. The older woman said. Clara answered at the same time. Twice. I looked at Clara. Her throat moved. 4. There it was. The real collision. Not between her life and mine. Between the man I believed I was and the city that made money under my name, while women like Clara slept beside fear and called it endurance. I took my phone out. Clara went rigid. No. The phone felt cold in my hand. Not because of the apartment. Not because of the bruises hidden under long sleeves and careful breathing. Because of the way Clara said no. Fast. Sharp. Afraid of what would happen if I moved too loudly inside a system that had already learned how to survive around my shadow. I did not call anyone from that room. That was the first thing I changed. I slid the phone back into my pocket and crouched in front of the kitchen drawer instead, the one with the broken handle. Utility bills. A clinic receipt. A folded envelope with no stamp. I opened it and found 3 money orders, all made out in Clara's name, all cashed, none endorsed by her hand. Different amounts. Same week every month. Protection money dressed up as help. I looked at Clara. Who collected it? Her fingers tightened around the edge of the counter. If I tell you in here, they'll hear it by morning. The older woman near the sink closed her eyes like that sentence had been true for a long time. So I did what men like me almost never do. I left without breaking anything. In the Escalade, I gave no orders to the 6 Vale organization enforcers waiting below. I sent them nowhere near Clara's building. Noise would only bury the tracks. Instead, I drove downtown alone, my tailored suit still carrying the smell of boiled rice, bleach, and that apartment's stale heat. By midnight, I was in my office, lights low, city spread under the glass like a confession no one had signed. I pulled every payment authorization Clara had processed for me in the last 8 months. At first it looked clean. Vendor transfers, property maintenance, community donations, small numbers, forgettable numbers. The kind rich men ignore because we are trained to watch only what bleeds in millions. Then I started reading the names attached to shell accounts. 3 belonged to storefronts I already knew were fronts. 1 led to a collection route on the west side. Another tied back to a housing trust that existed only on paper. Every thread touched neighborhoods where women paid to be left alone. Quiet fees, courtesy fees, emergency handling, different labels, same extortion. And every approval line had passed under my companies, never directly to me. Always through people who understood how power works best when it never has to introduce itself. I called in financial records from a private terminal no one in my house could access. I cross-checked signatures, transfer times, car service logs, and security gate entries. The pattern tightened. 2 men under my influence had been using my real estate network to pressure tenants in vulnerable buildings. They leaned on debt, immigration fear, sick parents, kids, late rent. If a woman stayed quiet and paid, the harassment stopped for a month. If she resisted, the visits multiplied. Clara had not been random. Her address had been flagged after she refused to push a false invoice through my office. After that, the pressure started at home instead of work. Small enough not to trigger police. Cruel enough to teach obedience. My jaw locked so hard I tasted blood. But the rot did not end there. One shell company feeding those payments shared counsel with a foundation tied to the Marlowe family members. For names, social charity faces in the papers, donors, hosts, smiling people under chandeliers. I opened archived event records, then board minutes, then escrow transfers. The same attorney kept appearing. The same account manager. The same housing outreach fund used to wash money from predatory collections into philanthropic reporting. Street extortion at the bottom. My own infrastructure in the middle. The family attached to my wedding laundering the top clean. I sat back and stared at the screen until dawn turned the windows silver. The city had not betrayed me. That would have been simpler. It had obeyed me too well. Men built themselves around what they thought I valued. Efficiency. Silence. Results. Dawn left a cold sheen across my office windows, and the ledger still burned behind my eyes when I walked into Clara Whitmore's apartment that evening with the printouts folded inside my coat. The place smelled like boiled rice and rubbing alcohol. A lamp with a cracked beige shade threw weak light over everything she had tried too hard to keep neat. A second-hand couch. A stack of pharmacy receipts tucked under a ceramic bowl. 2 pairs of shoes by the door that were too small to belong to her. The Whitmore household dependents were in the back room, quiet in the way people get quiet when they have learned that trouble listens through walls. Clara Whitmore came out of the kitchen and stopped when she saw me. Not surprised, just tired. That hurt more. "You shouldn't be here," she said. I closed the door behind me. "You should have told me." Her jaw tightened. No panic, no performance. Just that same disciplined restraint she wore in my office when men twice her size tried to bully a room and failed because she was in it. "I told you enough," she said. "You came anyway." I laid the papers on the table between us. Transfers. Shelf foundations. The Marlowe family members hidden at the top, like polished silver overwrought. "I know where the money went," I said. "I know who kept your family cornered. I know why the collections division never touched this neighborhood directly. They were protecting a channel. For your wedding," she said softly. The words landed without heat. That was the worst part. She had already made peace with being collateral in a machine built around me. I stepped closer. "Why didn't you come to me the first night they threatened your home?" Her eyes flicked toward the back room. That was answer enough, but I wanted the truth from her mouth. Not because I needed proof. Because I needed to hear what kind of pain she had carried in silence while standing 3 feet from me every day. "Send me away, then," I said. "Look at me and tell me none of this had anything to do with me." She laughed once. Bitter. Small. "That's exactly the problem. It had everything to do with you." The room went still. Clara Whitmore pressed both hands against the edge of the table like she needed something solid under them. "If I told you the truth, you would have torn half the city apart before breakfast. Don't deny it." I didn't. Her throat moved. "And if you did that, your name would be dragged through every paper in New York by noon. Your wedding would become an investigation. Your enemies would smell weakness. The Marlowe family members would turn it into a public war. And my family would still be in the middle when the bullets started flying." I stared at her. All night I had told myself she hid this because she did not trust me. Because I had built a life so brutal even loyalty kept distance from it. I was prepared for fear. For resentment. For disgust. I was not prepared for mercy. "You thought protecting me mattered more than asking me for help. I thought asking you for help would destroy everything around you," she said. "And it might not even save us." Us. The word went through me like a blade and a vow at the same time. I moved around the table slowly, giving her room to step back if she wanted it. She didn't. "I watched you build that public future piece by piece," she said, her voice fraying now. "The clean charities. The board seats. The engagement announcements. The photographs. I knew what it cost you to make powerful people believe you were untouchable in the right way. If I exposed this, I wasn't just dragging you into my mess. I was lighting a match under everything you had spent years arranging." My hands found her wrists gently, not to hold her in place, just to feel that she was real. Clara Whitmore. At last, her eyes broke. The crystal glass in the ballroom trembled under my fingers before I even took a sip. Everything looked perfect from a distance. White roses, gold ribbon, a string quartet under the chandelier. The Marlowe family members moving through the room like they had been born in silk and camera flashes. My name beside theirs on the seating chart, engraved in heavy cream cardstock, as if ink could turn a transaction into a future. But once Clara Whitmore had let her eyes break in front of me, I could not unsee anything. I stood near the marble column and watched one of the Marlowe family members laugh with a city councilman whose charity account I now knew had been used to wash cash through 3 clean foundations. Another touched my arm and asked whether the press list had been expanded. Another complained that the floral wall looked smaller than the mock-up. Their mouths kept moving. Their faces kept smiling. All I could hear was Clara Whitmore telling me, in a voice scraped raw, exactly how long this had been happening under the cover of polished dinners and public donations. I had built my life around reading danger fast. What chilled me now was how long I had mistaken elegance for innocence. A wedding planner floated toward me with a tablet in her hand and panic in her eyes. The ice sculpture had arrived late. The second camera crew wanted 10 more minutes. The mother of the bride wanted another family portrait before sunset. I told her to wait. My voice came out so flat that she stopped breathing for half a beat. Across the room, 6 Vale organization enforcers held their positions in black suits, invisible to everyone who mistook discipline for decoration. They had worked under me long enough to know the difference between my social face and my war face. Tonight, I saw one of them glance toward the bar, then toward a Marlowe family member, then down again too quickly. That was enough. I crossed the ballroom without excusing myself and stepped behind the velvet curtain near the service hall. The music softened. The air changed. Less perfume, more bleach and steel. I called all 6 of my men in, shut the door, and let the silence tighten around their throats. Phones on the table. No one argued. 6 phones hit the linen-covered prep station in a line. I picked up the 3rd one. Recent calls. A private number I recognized from a shell company Clara Whitmore had tied to the network. Messages deleted, but not well enough. A transfer schedule. A venue delivery list. Security gaps timed around tomorrow's rehearsal dinner. They had not only known, they had helped keep the door open. One of them finally said, it was supposed to stay contained. Contained. That word nearly made me smile. As if suffering could be folded neatly into a corner so men in tailored suits would not have to look at it. Who gave the order? I asked. He hesitated. Wrong move. Not because I raised my voice. I did not. Because for the first time in years, the men under me looked at my face and could not find the version of me they knew how to survive. A Marlowe family member made the request, he said. But it came through internal approval. We were told it protected the alliance. No noise. No scandal. No disruptions before the wedding. Before the wedding. There it was. Clean. Ugly. Final. Not loyalty. Not legacy. Not peace. Blindness, dressed in custom fabric. I stared at the row of phones and understood something I should have understood months ago. The engagement had become a sanctuary for cowards. My fiancée got status. Her family got access. Parts of my organization got political cover. And I got praised for maturity, restraint, respectability. They had all been congratulating me while using my name as a curtain. I thought of Clara Whitmore in that dim room. Her wrist in my hands. The way she had tried to protect not herself, but the fragile architecture I had mistaken for power. Champagne had already been poured when I walked into the Marlowe estate with 6 of my men behind me and silence in my throat. Crystal chandeliers burned over a ballroom dressed for a future I no longer believed in. White roses. Gold ribbons. A string quartet in the corner pretending not to see the tension that followed me in like smoke. The ceremony was still hours away, but the deal had started long before today. It was in the handshakes. The campaign donations. The zoning approvals. The names buried inside shell companies. Everyone in that room was wearing formal clothes over dirty intentions. I stopped at the center of the marble floor and let the music die on its own. My fiancé's family turned first. For Marlowe family members. Faces polished for photographs. Smiles already prepared. They faded when they saw I had not come alone. One of them tried to recover fast. Adrian, if this is about security, we can discuss it in private. No, I said. Private is how this lived. The room tightened. My fiancé stepped toward me in silk and diamonds. Beautiful in the cold way expensive things are beautiful. What are you doing? Ending the lie, I thought. Burying the bargain. Saving the only honest thing I had left. But I did not say any of that yet. I lifted a hand. One of my men placed the folder in it. Thick, black, heavy with paper, photographs, wire transfers, and copied messages. The kind of weight that could ruin families faster than bullets. When I agreed to this marriage, I said, my voice carrying across glass and polished silver, I believed I was buying peace for my organization. I opened the folder and let the first photograph slide onto a table set for 12. A child's inhaler. Then a second photograph. The front room of Clara Whitmore's house. Lamplight. Old furniture. A blanket folded over the arm of a couch. A place made careful by sacrifice. Then the third. The bruises on her wrists. My fiancée went pale first. Not from shame. From recognition. That was all I needed. What I saw in Clara Whitmore's home, I said, each word clean and sharp, showed me where that peace really came from. Nobody breathed. One of the Marlowe family members lunged for the papers. An enforcer stepped between them so fast the chair behind him scraped hard against the floor. I kept going. Money was moved through your family foundations. Favors were traded through city offices. Pressure was applied through people who thought fear looked cleaner when it wore gloves. I turned one page. And when Clara Whitmore got close enough to notice missing invoices, altered schedules, and names that should never have crossed my legitimate accounts, you decided she was easier to break than to silence properly. My fiancée shook her head too quickly. You have no proof I ordered anything. I held up a printed message. You said she wouldn't matter if the ceremony happened on time. The sound that left her was not outrage. It was panic. That changed the room. I heard it move through everyone like a crack through ice. Not just betrayal. Exposure. They had all known pieces. None of them knew I had the whole map. Then Clara Whitmore appeared in the doorway. Not dragged in. Not hidden behind me. Walking on her own. A dark dress. Chin lifted. Wrists no longer marked by bandages, but by memory. She should not have looked stronger than all of them in that moment. But she did. Every eye in the room went to her. One of the Marlowe family members snapped. She has no place here. Clara's voice cut through him. I do. Your arrangement entered my home before I entered this room. That was the first time I understood the full cruelty of what they had built. They had counted on class to protect them. Counted on a woman with bills, dependents, and no dynasty behind her to stay quiet because powerful people had already decided what her suffering was worth. I stepped in front of her anyway. The room went still. Not the polite stillness of rich people pretending not to stare. A different kind. The kind that comes right before a structure cracks and everyone inside it hears the first split. I looked at the 4 Marlowe family members lined beside the marble fireplace, dressed in grief-colored silk and old money certainty. They had spent months arranging my future like a business merger. They had counted bank accounts, family names, voting blocks, and board seats. They had not counted Clara Whitmore. They had not counted me seeing her house with my own eyes. The medicine bottles on the kitchen counter. The unpaid notices tucked beneath a cracked fruit bowl. The second-hand wheelchair by the hallway. The little stack of grocery receipts folded so sharply they looked like wounds. Everything she had hidden while answering my calls, organizing my life, and standing 3 feet from me every day without asking for pity. I took the ring from my pocket. A diamond that had once looked like power now felt cold and stupid in my palm. This ends tonight, I said. One of the Marlowe family members let out a short laugh, like I was performing anger and would soon return to the script. You are embarrassing yourself. No, I said. I was embarrassing myself when I let your family turn obligation into something they called honor. I put the ring on the tray beside the untouched champagne. I will not marry into a house that profits from silence. That landed harder than shouting would have. I saw it in the faces around me, in the way shoulders stiffened, in the way eyes flicked toward Clara, then away, as if truth had suddenly become contagious. The oldest of the Marlowe family members stepped forward. Be careful. I almost smiled. For years, men had said those words to me like a threat. Tonight they sounded small. I have been careful, I said. That is the problem. Then I turned, not to my enforcers, not to the family waiting for me to choose blood or business. To Clara. She stood straight, even now. Tired. Pale. Furious. Dignity wrapped around her like armor no one had paid for but her. I crossed the room and stopped close enough to hear her breathing. I can erase every debt tied to that house by morning, I said quietly. Medical bills. Back taxes. Legal records. Every hand that reached for your family through that arrangement is finished. Her eyes held mine. Steady. Unafraid. And what would that cost me? She asked. There it was. The question that mattered more than any vow I had almost taken. Not whether I could save her. Whether I could help her without claiming her. I let the silence answer first. Then I shook my head. Nothing you do not choose, I said. Not your freedom. Not your work. Not your future. I am not offering a cage with softer walls. Something in her face changed then. Not surrender. Not relief. Recognition. As if she finally believed the man standing in front of her was not the same one who had once mistaken control for devotion. Behind me, one of the Marlowe family members snapped that I was making a mistake that would cost me everything. I looked back once. They already cost me enough. Then I walked Clara out myself. No dramatic rush. No men closing ranks. No hand at her back steering her where I wanted. Just the sound of our steps crossing polished floors, then stone, then the night air opening around us like mercy. Outside, the black SUV waited under the portico lights. My 6 enforcers stood by in silence, reading the decision on my face before I spoke it. Stand down, I said. No retaliation. No message. No one touches the Whitmore house again unless it is to deliver what they need. They nodded once. Order received. World changed. Clara looked at me as if that command mattered more than the broken engagement. Maybe it did. Canceling a wedding was public. Restraint was personal. Restraint was proof.